And there's been a consistent rise in the number of violent attacks on the TTC since the start of the pandemic. And with that increase in crime, ridership is on the decline as commuters are becoming fearful for their own safety during their daily commutes. So let's bring in David Cooper, principal at Leading Mobility Consulting and professor at Toronto Metropolitan University, to talk about it. Good morning, David. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So you've studied and collected data on this for a number of years now, and it really does add context to what seems like near daily headlines about attacks on the system. But it turns out violent crime on the TTC, specifically attacks on passengers, appears to have peaked during the summer of 2020. And that peak still holds until the data was collected, which was up until November of last year. So why do you think that is? Like, how can that be? It didn't feel like there was this huge surge back then that we're experiencing now.
So there's three principles for having a great transit service. The first is clean, the second is safe, and the third is reliable. And in work that I've been doing looking at a national perspective of transit safety, what we've seen with transit agencies, including the TTC, was there was a rise in occurrences or offenses against customers at the beginning of the pandemic. It did start to trend downward. We are trending a little bit up right now. These statistics are collected per capita, but it is a conversation that we're collectively having. It's the two key issues in public transit right now is safety and also funding, and we're receiving emergency funding for operations, but we don't want to be in a situation where people don't come back to the TTC or transit systems across Canada if they don't feel safe.
That's right. So you've looked at the factors that could be contributing to the rise in violence, as you've just mentioned. So what impact do you think service and budget cuts have had on TTC safety?
So most transit agencies have actually maintained service levels, which has been a great news story, and that's been possible because we've received emergency funding from the province and federal governments for the first time. Usually they don't provide day-to-day operating support. We're in a bit of a phase right now where we don't want to be in a situation where people don't come back to transit because they don't feel safe, or right now there's budgetary conversations. So for instance, there is cuts that are proposed in the TTC budget. We have a 16% cut that's proposed to subway service. Crime and disorder on transit is really based on opportunity, and if we have less people in the system, less ridership, less attractiveness of that service, we end up in a situation where we may have some more concerns or issues on the system. Most of the calls for service for special constables, for instance, is on the subway service, and I am a bit concerned about when we look at budgets and where we could be going when it comes to service levels and those kind of components with them.
Okay, so let's look a little closer at recent prevention measures. Do you feel that the decision to put police officers on the TTC, so we're talking 80 officers in pairs across the TTC, taking into consideration the ridership numbers and also just the layout and the infrastructure of the system, do you think that could really be effective in preventing the number of crime-related incidents?
So there's a couple parts to this. Last week there was an announcement of having 80 Toronto Police Service officers onto the system through overtime duties to provide additional visibility in terms of what some people may perceive as increased safety on the TTC. Some people may not feel that just because of the primary role of police is enforcement. The core issue that we're seeing in public transit across the country is a lot of our concerns really stem from substance use, mental health, and housing. And we need to really come down to talk about these core issues and strategies that we can address these all holistically together. Policing is a component of enforcement where you need police to go to incidents of crime, you need police to respond to emergencies, but we need to really start talking about the core issues of what we need to solve on our public transit systems.
Okay, and it sounds like with these recent added measures, we are getting steps closer to that. But unfortunately, we're going to have to leave the conversation there and, hopefully circle back and check in with you later, see how things are going. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. That's David Cooper, principal at Leading Mobility Consulting and adjunct professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University. We will take a break right now, but stay with us. You're watching Global News Morning.